The bridge of the Stardust hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Soft blue light illuminated the faces of the crew, each focused intently on their respective consoles. Captain Valerius, a man whose face was a roadmap of past battles and hard decisions, stood with his hands clasped behind his back, gazing out at the star-dusted canvas of space. "Report," he commanded, his voice a low rumble that cut through the ambient noise. "All systems nominal, Captain," replied Lieutenant Mara, her fingers dancing across the holographic display in front of her. "We are approaching the designated coordinates for the Kepler 186f nebula. Xantus patrol activity is minimal in this sector." Valerius nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Minimal, but present. I want all sensors on high alert. We can't afford to be caught off guard." The Stardust, a sleek Terran Alliance cruiser, was venturing into uncharted territory. The Kepler 186f nebula was a swirling vortex of gas and dust, a navigational nightmare notorious for its unpredictable energy fields and treacherous currents. But it was also a potential goldmine of scientific discovery, a place where the laws of physics seemed to bend and twist in unnatural ways. Or so the official story went. Valerius knew the real reason they were here. A coded message, received through clandestine channels, had hinted at the existence of a Xantus bioweapon facility hidden deep within the nebula. The Xantus, a reptilian race known for their cunning and ruthlessness, were on the brink of war with the Terran Alliance. If the rumors were true, this facility could tip the scales in their favor, giving them the means to unleash a devastating plague upon the human colonies. "Captain," Mara interrupted his thoughts, "we have received a communication from Alliance Command. They are ordering us to abort our current mission and return to Sector Gamma 9 for reassignment." Valerius's jaw tightened. He had anticipated this. Alliance Command, ever cautious, would never approve such a risky operation based on mere speculation. They preferred to play it safe, to wait for the enemy to strike before reacting. But Valerius knew that waiting could be a fatal mistake. "Relay this message," he said, his voice firm. "We are experiencing communication difficulties due to the nebula's interference. We will comply with their orders as soon as we are able to establish a stable connection." Mara hesitated, her brow furrowed. "Captain, that's a direct violation of protocol." "Protocol be damned, Lieutenant," Valerius retorted, his eyes flashing with intensity. "We are on the verge of war. If we don't act now, millions of lives could be at stake. Are you with me, or are you going to let protocol dictate our actions while the Xantus prepare to unleash hell?" Mara met his gaze, her initial hesitation replaced by a flicker of determination. "With you, Captain. Always." Valerius nodded, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Good. Now set a course for the heart of the nebula. And keep those sensors peeled." The Stardust plunged deeper into the swirling chaos of the nebula. The ship shuddered and groaned as it navigated the treacherous currents of gas and dust. Strange energy fields flickered across the view screen, distorting the images of distant stars. "Energy readings are spiking, Captain," Mara reported, her voice strained. "We are experiencing significant turbulence. Hull integrity is at 85%. Divert power to the shields," Valerius ordered, "and brace for impact." The Stardust was thrown violently from side to side as it battled the forces of the nebula. The crew struggled to maintain their footing, their faces pale with exertion. "Xantus patrol detected, Captain." Ensign Joran, the sensor officer, announced, his voice tinged with alarm. "2 cruisers, closing in fast." Valerius cursed under his breath. He had hoped to avoid detection, but it seemed the Xantus were more vigilant than he had anticipated. "Evasive maneuvers," he commanded, "and prepare for combat." The Stardust twisted and turned through the nebula, trying to shake off its pursuers. The Xantus cruisers were relentless, their weapons firing bolts of energy that streaked past the Terran ship. "We're taking hits, Captain," Mara shouted. Shields are down to 60%. Valerius knew they couldn't outrun the Xantus forever. He needed to find a way to turn the tables, to use the nebula to his advantage. "Joran," he said, his mind racing, "scan the area for any anomalies, any unusual energy signatures." "I'm on it, Captain," Joran replied, his fingers flying across the console. "Wait, I'm detecting something. A massive energy source, cloaked within the nebula. It's huge." Valerius's heart leaped. Could this be it? The bioweapon facility he had been searching for. "Can you pinpoint its location?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Captain," Joran replied, "but the Xantus cruisers are heading towards it as well." Valerius glanced at the view screen. The Xantus cruisers were closing in, their weapons fully charged. He had a choice to make. Continue running and risk being destroyed, or make a desperate gamble and head straight for the cloaked structure. "All ahead full," he commanded, his voice ringing with determination. "Course. Direct intercept with the energy source. Prepare to engage the Xantus cruisers at close range." The Stardust surged forward, its engines roaring, and went straight toward the unknown structure. As the Stardust approached the cloaked structure, it shimmered into view, revealing a massive cylindrical complex built into an asteroid. But as the Xantus warfleet cloaked surrounding the Stardust, "Captain," Mara yelled, "we're surrounded. What are your orders?" Valerius looked grim. They were trapped. But he knew that their mission was not in vain. They had found the bioweapon facility. Now, all he had to do was figure out how to destroy it before the Xantus could unleash its deadly payload. "Lock weapons," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We're going down fighting." Counselor Jorn sat in the opulent chamber, the weight of his position pressing down on him like the gravity of a dying star. The Xylardian Council Hall, with its shimmering crystal walls and gravity-defying architecture, usually filled him with a sense of pride and purpose. Today, however, it felt like a gilded cage. The emergency session called by Commander Gray had plunged the Council into chaos. Accusations flew, ancient grudges resurfaced, and the room vibrated with the raw energy of 1,000 conflicting opinions. The holographic image of the human warship, the HSS Retribution, hung in the center of the chamber, a stark reminder of the crisis that had brought them all together. "This is an act of war," Counselor Vorin bellowed, his voice echoing through the hall. "The humans have violated our sovereignty, and they must be punished." Vorin, a hulking Xylardian with a reputation for his hawkish views, was a powerful voice on the council. His words resonated with many of the older members, those who remembered the brutal conflicts of the past. "We must proceed with caution," Jorn countered, his voice calm but firm. "We do not yet know the full extent of their intentions. To strike without understanding would be a grave mistake." "Understanding?" Vorin scoffed. "The humans have never understood anything but violence. They are a plague upon the galaxy, and we must eradicate them before they spread further." Jorn sighed inwardly. Vorin's rhetoric was tiresome, but it was effective. The fear of the unknown was a powerful weapon, and Vorin wielded it with skill. "Commander Gray," Jorn addressed the holographic image of the monitoring station officer. "Can you provide us with any further information regarding the Retribution's behavior?" Gray, his blue skin appearing even paler under the harsh lights of the station, cleared his throat. "The vessel has not engaged its weapons, Counselor. It is maintaining a steady course, avoiding populated systems. It appears to be searching for something specific." "Searching for a weakness in our defenses, no doubt," Vorin interjected. "Or perhaps," Jorn suggested, "they are searching for something else entirely. Has anyone considered that they might be in distress?" A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. The idea that the humans, the fierce and independent humans, might need help was almost laughable. "That is absurd, Counselor," Vorin sneered. "The humans would rather die than ask for assistance from anyone, least of all us." "Perhaps," Jorn conceded, But is it not our duty to investigate all possibilities before resorting to violence? We are the Xylardian Council, not a band of marauders. We are supposed to be the guardians of peace and justice. Peace and justice are luxuries we cannot afford when faced with a threat like the humans, Vorin retorted. We must be decisive, we must be strong, and we must show them that we will not tolerate any transgression against our laws. The debate raged on for hours, the councillors divided between those who favored immediate military action and those who urged caution and diplomacy. Jorn found himself increasingly isolated, his voice drowned out by the chorus of fear and anger. As the session dragged on, a private communication flashed across Jorn's personal console. It was a message from Ambassador Lyra, the Xylardian representative to the Terran Alliance. Counselor, Lyra's message began, I have received credible reports of a devastating plague spreading through the human colonies. Millions are dying, and their scientists have been unable to find a cure. I believe the Retribution may be here in search of medical assistance. Jorn's heart sank. If Lyra's information was accurate, the situation was far more complex than anyone had realized. The humans were not invaders, but desperate refugees seeking salvation. This changes everything, he muttered to himself. He knew that he had to act quickly, before Vorin and his warmongering allies could push the Council into a full-scale war. But how could he convince them to listen to reason when they were blinded by fear and prejudice? Jorn gathered his resolve and stood up, his voice cutting through the noise of the chamber. Counselors, he announced, I have received information that may shed new light on this situation. He proceeded to share Lyra's message with the Council, presenting the evidence of the human plague and the possibility that the Retribution was seeking a cure. The reaction was mixed. Some counselors expressed sympathy for the humans, while others remained skeptical. Vorin, however, was unmoved. This is nothing but a ruse, he declared. The humans are trying to manipulate us with their sob stories. We must not fall for their tricks. We cannot simply dismiss this information without investigating it further, Jorn insisted. I propose that we send a diplomatic delegation to the Retribution to ascertain their true intentions. Vorin scoffed. Negotiate with the humans. That is madness. They will use the opportunity to gather intelligence and prepare for an attack. We can send a small, unarmed vessel, Jorn countered. A gesture of good faith. If they refuse to cooperate, then we will know that their intentions are hostile. The debate continued, but Jorn sensed that he was gaining ground. Some of the younger counselors, those who had never experienced the horrors of war, were beginning to question Vorin's rhetoric. Finally, after hours of deliberation, a vote was called. The results were close. But in the end, Jorn's proposal was narrowly approved. A diplomatic delegation would be sent to the Retribution. The fate of the Xylardian Council, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Jax adjusted the settings on his battered console, his brow furrowed in concentration. The remote space station, a derelict relic orbiting a gas giant on the fringes of HumanityInSpace, was hardly luxurious, but it was home. Or at least, it was where he hung his hat between salvage runs. Anything interesting out there, Jax? A gruff voice called out from the galley. Just the usual cosmic debris. Grok, Jax replied, his eyes glued to the screen. And a whole lot of trouble brewing. Grok, a hulking Krobnar with skin like granite and a penchant for strong coffee, was Jax's partner in crime. They had been scavenging the spaceways together for years, eking out a living on the scraps left behind by the galaxy's more prosperous civilizations. Trouble, you say? Grok lumbered into the cockpit, his massive frame filling the doorway. What kind of trouble? A human warship trespassing in Xylardian territory kind of trouble, Jax said, gesturing towards the sensor readings on the screen. And the Xylardians are not happy about it. Grok whistled. Humans and Xylardians. That's a recipe for disaster. Jax nodded. Indeed. But disaster can be profitable if you play your cards right. He had intercepted distress signals from both the HSS Retribution and factions within the Xylardian Council. The humans were desperate for a cure to a deadly plague, and some of the Xylardians were willing to negotiate, while others were itching for a fight. "I'm thinking there might be some valuable salvage to be had in that sector," Jax said, a gleam in his eye. "Wreckage, data, maybe even a cure for the human plague." Grok grinned. "Now you're talking. Let's get this rust bucket ready for action." Their ship, the Stardust Drifter, was a patchwork of salvaged components and jury-rigged modifications. It wasn't pretty, but it was fast and reliable, and it had gotten them out of more than a few tight spots. As they prepared for their journey, Jax received a coded message from a contact within the Xylardian Council. It was a warning. The Xylardians are mobilizing a fleet to intercept the human vessel. The message read, "They are also searching for anyone who might be aiding the humans. Be careful, Jax. This could get ugly." Jax cursed under his breath. He had hoped to slip in and out unnoticed, but it seemed the Xylardians were more vigilant than he had anticipated. "We need to be discreet," he said to Grok. "No unnecessary risks. We grab what we can and get out before the shooting starts." The Stardust Drifter jumped into hyperspace, heading towards the troubled sector. As they approached the Xylardian human standoff, Jax detected a damaged escape pod drifting in the void. "Life signs detected," he announced. "One survivor, human. Should we pick him up?" Grok asked. "He could be trouble." Jax hesitated. Rescuing the human would complicate their mission, but he couldn't simply leave him to die. "All right," he said, "but he's on his own. We're not getting involved in his war." They retrieved the escape pod and brought the survivor aboard the Stardust Drifter. He was a young Terran ensign, battered and bruised, but alive. "Thank you," he said, his voice weak. "I thought I was a goner." "Don't mention it," Jax replied. "Just stay out of our way. We're not part of your war." The ensign nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. Jax couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for the young man. He was just a pawn in a much larger game. As they continued towards the Xylardian human conflict, they were ambushed by a Xylardian patrol ship. "We're under attack," Grok shouted, scrambling to the weapons console. "They're hailing us, demanding that we surrender." Jax cursed. The Xylardians had found them. Now, they had to fight their way out. "Brace for impact," he yelled as the Stardust Drifter shuddered under the Xylardian fire. They were caught between a rock and a hard place, with the Xylardians on their tail, and the human war raging ahead. Commander Gray stared at the swirling nebula on his view screen, a knot of unease tightening in his gut. The human ship, HSS Retribution, had entered the nebula, defying the Council's orders and venturing into the unknown. Gray knew this nebula. He had studied its anomalies for years. It was a graveyard of lost ships and forgotten secrets, a place where reality itself seemed to fray at the edges. "Report," he commanded, his voice echoing in the dimly lit monitoring station. "The Retribution is still transmitting its plea for assistance," Officer Reed replied, her voice tight with frustration. "They claim a plague is ravaging their colonies and that a cure lies hidden within the nebula." Gray frowned. He had seen the images of the infected human colonies. The suffering was undeniable. But the Council had been unwavering. No human ships in restricted space. Their energy signatures are fluctuating wildly, another officer reported. The nebula's interference is making it difficult to track them. Gray clenched his fist. The nebula was a natural shield, masking the Retribution's movements and making it impossible to determine their true intentions. "Increase sensor sensitivity," he ordered. "I want to know where they're going and what they're looking for." As hours passed, the tension in the monitoring station grew. The Retribution continued its perilous journey through the nebula, its path erratic and unpredictable. Gray couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to happen. Suddenly, a series of alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and the screens flickered with static. "What's going on?" Gray demanded, his heart pounding in his chest. "We've lost contact with the Retribution," Officer Reed reported, her voice trembling. "They've vanished." Vanished? Gray couldn't believe it. A warship the size of the Retribution couldn't simply disappear. "Scan the area," he ordered. "Search for any trace of their presence." The officers scrambled to comply, their fingers flying across the control panels. But the nebula remained silent, its secrets tightly guarded. As Gray watched the empty view screen, a chilling realization dawned on him. The nebula wasn't just a natural phenomenon. It was something more, something ancient and powerful. He remembered the stories his grandfather had told him, tales of a long-forgotten civilization that had once thrived within the nebula. They had possessed technology beyond comprehension, capable of manipulating space and time. But their ambition had led to their downfall, and their civilization had vanished without a trace. Could the Retribution have stumbled upon something that was better left undisturbed? Could the human ship have awakened a dormant power that would threaten the entire galaxy? Gray knew that he had to find the Retribution and stop them, no matter the cost. He couldn't allow the mistakes of the past to be repeated. "Prepare my shuttle," he ordered, his voice filled with grim determination. "I'm going into the nebula." His officers stared at him in disbelief. The nebula was a death trap, a place where even the most experienced pilots feared to tread. "Commander, you can't be serious," Officer Reed protested. "It's too dangerous." "I have no choice," Gray replied. "The fate of the Council may depend on it." He knew he was risking his life, but he couldn't stand idly by while the Retribution jeopardized the future of the galaxy. He had to act, even if it meant facing the unknown horrors that lurked within the nebula. As his shuttle prepared for launch, Gray took one last look at the view screen. The nebula swirled before him, its depths hiding a multitude of secrets. He knew that he was entering a world of danger and uncertainty, but he was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The shuttle soared into the void, heading towards the heart of the nebula. Gray braced himself for the journey, his mind filled with images of lost civilizations and forgotten powers. He knew that the fate of the galaxy rested on his shoulders, and he wouldn't fail. Captain Valerius gripped the controls of his battered fighter, his knuckles white. The nebula swirled around him, a chaotic storm of energy and debris. He had been separated from the Stardust during the Xantus attack, and now he was alone, adrift in the heart of the unknown. "This is Captain Valerius," he transmitted, his voice crackling over the comms. "Is anyone out there?" Only static answered him. The nebula was a communications dead zone, making it impossible to contact the Stardust or Alliance Command. Valerius knew that his chances of survival were slim. He was running low on fuel, his shields were failing, and the Xantus could be lurking anywhere. But he refused to give up hope. He had to find a way out of this mess and complete his mission. He remembered the coded message that had led him to this place, the Xantus bioweapon facility hidden within the nebula. If he could locate it and destroy it, he might still be able to prevent a devastating war. He activated his sensors, scanning the area for any sign of the facility. But the nebula's interference was overwhelming, making it difficult to distinguish anything from the background noise. As he flew deeper into the nebula, Valerius began to experience strange hallucinations. He saw images of long-dead soldiers, their faces contorted in agony. He heard whispers in his ear, voices that seemed to come from another dimension. He knew that the nebula was affecting his mind, twisting his perceptions and blurring the line between reality and illusion. He had to fight back, to maintain his focus and resist the madness that threatened to consume him. Suddenly, a bright light flashed before him. Valerius squinted, shielding his eyes from the glare. As the light faded, he saw a massive structure looming in the distance. It was cylindrical in shape, with intricate carvings adorning its surface. Could it be? Valerius muttered. The Xantus bioweapon facility. He steered his fighter towards the structure, his heart pounding with excitement. As he drew closer, he saw a squadron of Xantus fighters patrolling the area. They spotted him immediately and opened fire. Valerius dodged and weaved, evading the Xantus fire with practiced skill. He knew that he couldn't take them all on, but he had to buy himself enough time to reach the facility. He activated his weapons, returning fire with a vengeance. The Xantus fighters were fast and agile, but Valerius was a seasoned pilot, and he knew how to exploit their weaknesses. One by one, he shot down the Xantus fighters, their burning wreckage scattering across the nebula. But more Xantus fighters were arriving, drawn by the sound of battle. Valerius knew that he was running out of time. He had to make a desperate gamble if he wanted to survive. He steered his fighter towards the bioweapon facility, ignoring the Xantus fire that tore through his shields. He activated his afterburners, pushing his engines to their limit. As he approached the facility, he saw a massive energy shield protecting its entrance. He knew that he couldn't penetrate it with his fighter's weapons. He had to find another way in. He scanned the structure, searching for any weakness in its defenses. Finally, he spotted a small opening near the base of the facility. It was a long shot, but it was his only chance. Valerius steered his fighter towards the opening, dodging the Xantus fire that whizzed past him. He took a deep breath and braced himself for impact. The fighter slammed into the energy shield, its hull screeching and groaning. For a moment, Valerius thought he had failed. But then, the shield flickered and died, creating a hole just large enough for his fighter to pass through. Valerius steered his fighter through the opening, plunging into the darkness of the bioweapon facility. He had made it. Now, all he had to do was destroy the facility and escape before the Xantus caught up with him.